Hello everybody, good evening and welcome to another presentation of Beyond the Headlines. I am Stephenson, Worme, your host. It's always an absolute pleasure to have you on board with us. And of course, the atmosphere in Grenada these days is to be election ready. And I think the entire country is into that mode. And it is so fitting, of course, to have a couple of noblemen with us here this evening in studio. And they're important factors, important persons, of course, in terms of the preparatory work that must be done to ensure that elections are smooth and running well. And I'm referring, of course, to the supervisor of the election. And he is to my immediate left. And we want to welcome, of course, Mr. Elvis Moraine here with us. And then to his left, we've got Mr. Ferdinand Phillip, who is the civic registration officer, of course, in the parliamentary, in the elections office. So these two gentlemen are here with us this evening. We want to say good evening and welcome to both of you.
Good evening and thank you very much for having us in this program.
Okay, and could we establish that it's okay to use the first name? Is fine?
That's okay.
Fine. And a little we were talking about you being off air, that is in the hot seat. Really hot seat. Well, the elections office is often the smallest agency in local government until election day, when it often becomes, I would think, the largest. Let me just ask you, what do you think is the public perception in regards to the elections and election and preparation for it? Some people tend to see it as just this huge one-day affair where all of a sudden, in this case, June 23rd is election day. But I suspect that they're much more involved than this one-day affair, isn't it? Welcome again, Mr. Moraine. Tell us a little bit about that.
Thank you very much. And again, good evening to the listening and viewing public. And you're so correct with that. And maybe because of that perception that many people have, you find that we find ourselves just recently, when the last day of registration, we had that influx of people to register. But contrary to this, we have been preparing for elections. Once election has gone, and we start a new cycle to prepare for election. And many will know that we refer to the issue of continuous registration. Right, so there is no enumeration this period, and some people confuse it, right? So it is continuous registration. So we prepare people every day. So in other words, once you turn 18, and or if someone, it might be older than 18, but you meet the requirement for registration, you can walk into our office Monday to Friday, 9 to 5, and register. Just over the last 2 years, when 2020, the 3rd of February actually, 2020, we started the replacement of expired ID. So those two major activities were happening at the same time, and all that were in preparation for, election. Generally, when you we look at just about a year and a half, in terms of way off when elections are constantly due, and we start preparing. So we start doing our training, identifying, looking at polling stations, all the preparatory work that we need to do. So it's something that is ongoing, because you have to always be ready for election. While we know, yes, election is a 5-year cycle, but of course it can happen before that. So it has been constant preparation. And another key feature of this is the publication of the list. So we have been publishing lists like four times for the year, 2 addendum, and we have, of course, the consolidated list. So we have the 31st of March, first quarter, 30th of June, 30th of September, and 31st of December. Now, let me just say this: it's the period, because it is important for you to publish on the day itself. because it's inclusive of that day. So we publish maybe like 2 weeks, sometimes 3 weeks, but it's for that period. So you have, and of course, the electors and the general public, they are invited to scrutinize the list. You know, it shouldn't be just an activity when election is here and you find that everybody just rushing to, it should be an ongoing process.
Okay,
right?
So we'll delve a little bit more into that, but does the elections body, does the elections office, does that body have a responsibility in regards to alerting the public in terms of, or rather inviting the public and encouraging the people to get involved in the registration process? When election comes around, we notice that the parliamentarians, the activists, the political activists, they seem to be the one really pushing and encouraging people. Does the office have any specific responsibility to encourage the nation, look, get registered, be involved in the process? Ferdinand, would you?
Yes, again, evening to all of our listeners, all of our viewers. It's a pleasure to be here.
Yes.
And to answer the question, of course, the office does have that responsibility. It is one of our primary responsibilities, and as Mr. Morin indicated, the general public, as much as there are 3 of us here this evening, but the general public and the tens of thousands of them that are actually registered play a very critical role. Not because I have said it, but if you go through the legislation, it empowers them. It gives teeth to the general public, not only those who are registered, but those who might just be viewing here this evening, those who are concerned about the integrity of the entire process. And of course, I would agree with you that it seems to be that, you know, especially the major parties seem to be pushing the floor at this moment, but that's how it tends to be. Persons galvanize into camps, whether it is for one party or the other, and on a lot of occasions, it is what they say that persons tend to believe, and we do struggle from time to time because we are a neutral voice. We don't take a side. We are not. That's not our mandate. We are there to conduct elections. We are not there to favor a particular group above the other.
Right.
And so persons may have their preference, and so the tendency is that we gravitate to those whom we may prefer. But yes, the office does have that ultimate responsibility to educate the public, to keep persons abreast of what are the going-ons, you know, as it relates to electoral matters. And, you know, unfortunately, as was just indicated, it seems to be that we are the minnows until elections come in the air, and then we begin to major. But the reality is, as Mr. Morin indicated, from the time the election completes on the 23rd, and a few days later the writ is returned to the Governor General, the cycle restarts. Okay, it may be done quietly, so we do not stand on a mountain and bang a gong for everybody to hear, but we constantly are involved in that process to ensure that when the cycle culminates at the end of that 5-year period, or before that as the case may be, that every person is sufficiently prepared, you know, for that process.
Yeah, but do you think really, and maybe you're not the best person to ask, some people don't like to evaluate themselves, but do you think that in terms of that sort of publicity that I asked about, that has been done effectively over the years? Are you impeded in any way by your staff? Do you have sufficient people on the staff? Because it seems to me it's quite a tedious task. Many people don't seem to suggest that, but are you well staffed to be able to get these messages across there to the general public of the importance of registration, those sort of things?
Let me go with this one.
Yes,
I think it's important that
I hope it's an important enough question to ask.
Yeah, it's important. I believe we can do more.
Okay.
Yeah, I believe we can do more, and maybe not necessarily adding to the staff on a permanent basis.
Okay.
But of course, you know, in critical period, we can upscale that. Mm-hmm. You know, I mean, I give full praise to Mr. Philip and his work that he's doing. And sometimes you need to hear another voice. Because I tell you something, and I'll be very blunt about this one. There are times we say things and people do not believe the electoral office. People tend to, you would say something from the electoral office and somebody gave a different version of it. And that is what is good. And we say, okay, look, this is the official, office for information relative to election. So I believe we need to kind of change our strategy a bit. Upscale, there are times when we need to pick in terms of what we do and how we do it. And I think, I wouldn't say add to the staff. I don't think it's a staffing issue, but I think strategically we need to look at how we can have people employed in short term.
Okay.
Right, to appeal to different audience and to ensure that we are reaching the public the way we're supposed to.
Mm-hmm. Does the elections office have the sort of autonomy to go about and get its work done efficiently? Because early on you talk about neutrality and how important it is to be neutral in all of this. Does it have the sort of autonomy to be as neutral as possible? Or are there sometimes some challenges in the execution of your to make sure that you stay right between the two extremes?
Well, I think it has to do more or less with the individual. Okay. Because the act is clear. Mm-hmm. The act gives you the remit in which you should operate, and it's clear. So if the individual, stay within the legislation in terms of what should happen and so on, you should be okay, right? So I would say to anyone who holding this office, any part of the process, you must make sure that at all times you're within the legislative framework, right? And I don't think we have gotten the support. You see, people sometimes look at independence in terms of, okay, well, it is funded by the state. But that's just what it is. It is funded by the state. So, but I don't know, we've had challenges in terms of resources when we require resources. Since I've been there, we've always, gotten the support from the Ministry of Finance in terms of when we make requests, when we have to upscale, for example, and I could give a typical example. When we started to replace the card, of course, it's expensive. Sometimes we have to procure, for example, laminates, and you have to do it in 6 to 8 months procurement. And when we get to the end, that period where we might exhaust our funds and we go into the supplementary side, we get full support. Mm-hmm. So in other words, I believe it's up to the individual in the chair who, if you want to deviate from the legislation, then that would be your downfall. But you stick because the legislation is clear as to what you ought to do.
Okay. How tedious is this overall? I know obviously when it's coming up to elections, it would become more intensive, obvious. But within that, from one election to the other, is it always a pretty tedious task where you got to be very meticulous about everything? Just give us a little idea, because I don't think most people understand that this is very challenging indeed. Is it?
It is challenging, and part of the challenge again has to do not with so much the work, mm-hmm. but it's the misinformation, right? Okay. A lot of times, people say things, and I always, and I advocated on the program before, this is the business of every Grenadian. Now, I would prefer, my preferred choice is that you seek clarity, or in some cases where you can help to inform the public, you do so. Okay. But what we've seen is that people decide to go the other way around. It's like to stir something, so you put misinformation out there. So it makes it difficult. And sometimes Mr. Philip would tell you that you have to be engaged, firefighting kind of thing, to always try to outfire, always try to correct something. Somebody say, well, look, I heard that. And it distracts us from really what we're supposed to do. The integrity of the process, it involves everyone in Grenada. It involves, everyone and I have no problem putting pressure on the office to make sure that the integrity of the process is maintained. That's what I'm talking about. I'm talking about the bombarded with misinformation, and deliberate, and sometimes is unfortunate, but people who know better, will be out there spreading this misinformation. I have had situations when we talk about the same replacement of the card, where I have known people who they replaced the card, follow all the instructions. And it was alleged then that these same people would tell other people contrary to what is required. And those sort of things sort of add to the confusion, and also it makes the process unnecessarily difficult.
Okay.
Not really in terms of what has to happen, but in terms of the always trying to correct information, trying to see how we, and that level of clarity. Sometimes I think if we take another approach and understand, yes, we have an electoral system, we have a staff man in that, but of course it's responsible for all of us to make sure that this process is one that is as transparent, it maintains integrity, and at the end of the day, we all are proud of it, right? I always tell my staff, the criticism that are leveled against the office is not personal, because I'll tell you something. Even if Mr. Philip and I, we are not there going forward, whoever sits in that chair, individually or collectively, you are going to face the same situation unless we evolve as a people and understand our role in the process. Right? So I want to send that clarion call to the public that we need to understand that this is not just about Elvis Morin or Ferdinand Phillip. This is about us coming collectively as to how we shape the process so all of us can be proud. I always talk about the reform process, and we'll talk about that later. And the need for us to be so informed that when that period is here, we can make choices that we are proud of.
Okay, there has been quite a build-up to the election, which would be within a few weeks. And as you have intimated, there have been individuals who've hurled quite a lot of criticism about the office and its efficiency or inefficiency, as the case may be. But there have been some concerns by some individuals, which I have heard, in regards to some of our offices, for example, that had its opening hours and closing hours, and there are times you had members of the electorate who visit the area or the office and it was closed. That seemed to have caused quite a bit of concern around the country over the last couple of weeks. Any desire to just share on that and just open up on it? Were there any challenges involved?
I wouldn't sit here and try to defend this. Okay. Because there is nothing to defend about this. I mean, yes, in some cases, I think to some extent it was inflated a bit. Okay. But we know, yes, there was truth to it. There were times when the offices, and it should be told, I'll be very frank here with this. There are times when we know, or we get to know that the office was closed when the public, somebody might call and say, well, look, I visit the office and so on, right? So we've had that kind of breakdown that we have since tried very hard to address. But I want to say this. The office being closed was not the major issue, however. The major issue here is that, and we could speak of, and I want to zero in on this particular constituency, St. Andrews Northwest, right? Okay. We've had times, and we've heard it, when electorate, potential and otherwise, went there and the service was not available. However, it was not one of hardware. It was not one of the officer not being there. It was a network issue, right? Okay. Where sometimes you have a power surge, and that power surge results in the network going down. The thing is, because of the interest that people take in the electoral process, because there are other services in that area that went down, public services. But of course, the electoral office, because of what we do, we were the one that were highlighted, we were the one. So a lot of the times, the concerns didn't have to do, and I'm not saying, again, that there weren't instances where our officers weren't, at post. But most of the issue we had, they had to do with a network problem for us. But I must say that we have gotten good support from that provider in terms of making sure in the quickest possible time that the issue is addressed. You know.
Ferdinand, what about the responsibility of the citizens of the country? There have always been this clarion call, please come forward, do your registration. And then all of a sudden, a few weeks prior to elections, there is this surge. People are frantic, scurrying, trying to get registered. Don't the public have their own responsibilities to ensure that they take initiative and be registered?
And I am fully in agreement with what you just said there. I would build upon this a little bit by then reminding the general public that having initiated the process of going and get registered or going and have your expired ID replaced, we have quite a few cards that we are appealing to persons to please go and collect. The problem was really acute prior to the last general election, where, to be honest, I believe in one of the constituencies there was over 1,300 and something cards gathering, well, not dust, but gathering age
really?
in our offices. But I don't think it's that bad anymore. However, we do have the problems still existing, and our registration officers who are now returning officers, almost every day remind us to appeal to persons to please come and collect the cards. And we ought to be mindful, the general public, that it is a voter's ID card issued primarily for voting purposes, for verification on election day. So the public does have a responsibility, and to build upon what Mr. Maureen was just indicating, we commend, the various stakeholders who have highlighted, as Mr. Maureen said, on several occasions, we got to realize an office may have been closed because of agitation by persons out there. But in saying that the public has a responsibility, we are also appealing to the public, to be mature, to be civic-minded in the manner in which you do it. And I just want to cite a little example. Recently, when I believe it was Monday of about 2 weeks ago, when the last day of registration, it was made known to the public that, of course, that was the end of registration on that day. Now, the law says that once the writ is issued, no registration. Now, the writ did come out a little after 8 in the morning, but unfortunately, some persons told persons out there to go to the offices to get registered because registration was continuing. Now, several persons actually put that out there. But one person, and I won't call the name, but did what I thought was very mature of them. They called the office and they said, this is a rumor I'm hearing. Is there any truth to it before I ask persons to go out? And we were able to say no. Our office is open at 9 o'clock. The writ was issued around 8:30. So no registration after the writ. And the person said, thank you. And I am saying that to build upon the point that the general public has a responsibility. But the manner in which sometimes we do it, we sometimes tear down the office. You ask yourself sometimes if persons are out there to make the office look bad for other reasons. But I generally don't believe that is the case. But in going forward, we continue to appeal to persons, because as Mr. Maureen said, whether he's a supervisor going forward or not, or I sit here, or anybody in the office at that particular moment, there will be criticisms. And so we continue to appeal to persons. The Constitution gives the office that authority to conduct elections. And we always, because one of the things, we are a showpiece to many other territories. They boast of us, and we do not want to destroy that image, because of misinformation or maybe of the personal agendas of some. It is a responsibility of the general public, and we commend persons for doing a great job, thus far. We appeal to those who may not always, do it in an ideal manner. But as we go forward, we continue to have that responsibility and to allow persons, to appeal to persons to recognize it's not only the supervisor sitting here, it is every one of us as Grenadians, Caricunians, PT Martinicans.
Right, so we're getting the election ready here, and we've got two members in the elections office with us in studio here this evening, Mr. Elvis Maureen, of course, Mr. Ferdinand Phillip. We're going to take a short break and we'll be right back. There's quite a lot in store for us ahead.
really matters to you, come home to Grenada Cooperative Bank. Since 1932, we have shared the same values: financial diligence, investing with prudence, transparent compliance, consistent performance.
Welcome home, Grenada.
No matter the economic climb, we always stand the test of time.
Welcome home, Grenada, the bank that goes the extra mile. Welcome home, Grenada, the bank that serves with a smile.
Welcome to a bank you can truly call your own. Grenada Cooperative Bank.
We care because you matter.
Co-op Bank. Welcome home.
When a loved one passes on, we all need the comfort, support, and guidance of a trusted friend. You can rely on LaCour Brothers Funeral Home. We provide a personalized professional service that exceeds all expectations. Our dedicated staff responds to your every need with the greatest detail, ensuring affordability with a variety of options. Upgraded state-of-the-art facilities, spacious air-conditioned chapel with live internet streaming, a modern, environmentally safe crematorium, the only of its kind on island, private viewing spaces, large on-site repast center, a modern transportation fleet. Join our burial society today and make personalized arrangements for that final moment. As you prepare to enter your loved one into eternal rest, visit or call LaCour Brothers Funeral Home and select a package that brings added comfort to the entire family. LaCour Brothers Funeral Home and Burial Society, continuing a tradition of excellence.
If there was ever a time to keep and stay healthy, it's now! We at Hills and Valley are here to help you take deliberate steps to maintain your health. We stayed true to maintaining the most comprehensive rates while stocking the widest range of medicines and health devices, including personal protective equipment. There are so many benefits shopping with us. You get great savings through discounts for senior citizens and reward cards for loyal customers. Ask about owning yours today. Visit us at Halifax and Grenville Street, St. George, Jubilee Street, at the Grenville Bus Terminal, and at Hillsborough, Carrico. Our wholesale distribution on Halifax Street also stocks the widest range of pharmaceuticals. We are with you on the hills and in the valleys. We are Hills and Valley Pharmacy.
The most anticipated family fun-filled event on the GBN calendar is back. The Maggie King of the Grill. Join us on June 4th at Montrouge. Be part of the culinary masterpiece as the best grillers on island compete for the coveted title of the Maggie King of the Grill. Think you have what it takes? Be part of the action. June 4th. Book your spot. If not, step away from the grill. If you can't handle the heat. Maggie King of the Grill is sponsored by Maggie, Matook's Barbecue Sauce, Rubis, Dasani Water, Calico Shopping Center, Duty Free Caribbean, and Siesta Hotel.
Do more with your new GUT Credit Union Visa debit card, which gives you access to your cash at any Connex or Visa certified ATMs locally and internationally. Make your payments with a tap of your card using the contactless feature and have the freedom to make purchases locally, online, or overseas whenever you travel anywhere Visa is accepted. Experience the enhanced security fraud protection through the Visa chip technology. If you don't have your new GUT Credit Union Visa International debit card, speak to any one of our representatives today to do more. Your new GUT Credit Union Visa International debit card, a smarter way to access your cash. More smart, more secure.
Have you heard about the new soft weave bathroom tissue with total hygiene? As hygiene and safety have taken center stage, our bathroom tissue is now manufactured with 3 different technologies to offer the best protection for you and your family. UVC light technology for a safe and effective disinfection process, eliminating 99.9% of microorganisms. Also, production at high temperatures, killing all types of germs and bacteria. And it's pH controlled with delicate fibers to prevent irritation for even sensitive skin. Soft Weave Total Hygiene Bathroom Tissue, available in supermarkets and shops island-wide. Visit Soft Weave Caribbean Facebook or Instagram pages for more information.
Yes, and welcome back. And of course, we are getting, that's the nation, of course, election ready. We got two members of the elections office here with us in Mr. Ferdinand Phillip and, of course, Elvis Moraine. They're here with us. So we just want to talk a little bit here about the identification card, of course, which has become a talking point, and people are still asking the question, you know, about the registration card. There are individuals who are still not sure up to this point as to if they did not what you call re-register, can they vote? Now, we've been hearing conflicting opinions, even ideas at times from the political platform. So help the nation here. Tell us what's the situation. You voted back in 2018. Are you automatically qualified to vote without re-registering, if you want to put it that way, in the upcoming elections?
All right, let me first of all say this, that we were never involved in re-registration.
Good.
Okay? And if the population or the public could recall, when we had our press conference to usher in the replacement of expired ID, we made it abundantly clear that you're not re-registering. Now, what the conflict came in with the limitation of the electronic system, because you were required to bring your documents over and actually go through the entire process. Mm-hmm. So the population generally was saying, well, okay, but why do I have to, if I'm not re-registering, why I'm bringing all that? But that's just the limitation of the system. So the system is such as that every time you come to, whether you change your name, or you change your place of residence, or let's suppose you're married, you want to add that, you must do a new application in the system. That's how it has to be done, because you cannot go forward, right? So that's where the conflict was, but we were never engaged. As a matter of fact, we can evidence that through the fact that when we produce consolidated lists. I mean, the truth be told is that the thousands of people that are on that list have not all replaced the card. And we need to bear in mind, the first thing is that you ought to be on the register. That's your first thing. You must be on the register to vote. All right? So let the entire population rest assured that if you didn't replace your card, you are entitled, unless something happened and you were on the list, and then of course in that case you file a claim and we go through to see what happened. But you didn't have to. In other words, I want to go back even further. Once you were registered, as of when that new system started in 2012, and of course a lot of us would have registered then in 2013, you will be there unless you were removed for some reason based on the act. So everyone, all right, whether you replace your card would be 10 years, going on 10 years now, you are entitled to vote. As a matter of fact, we extend this further to say that if you didn't replace your card, for that verification on the day of election, we ask you to bring that expired card that carries the expiry date the 31st of January 2020. So we allow that. And people may say, it's ironical because, okay, why are you bringing an expired card? But it says because you were never removed. And that card helps to verify, that you are whoever you are on the day. And likewise, it helps to minimize voter fraud.
In the event that you don't have such a card,
Good.
it was lost.
I was going there.
Yes, go right ahead.
All right. So when you get into that booth, and we encourage the entire population to keep your card in safekeeping and to walk with your card on that day, inclusive of the expiry card I just talked about there. Not the card before. That card that carries the expiry date of the 31st, right? You carry that. Now, and the Act makes provision for this.
Okay.
If for some reason that your card lost. You are not deprived from voting, right? You're going to still come, and of course, the question will be asked by the presiding officer. You satisfy the presiding officer that your card is lost, or one was not issued to you, right? And you will be allowed to cast your ballot, right? So we are saying to people, walk with the card. We don't want to have a situation where people are delayed unnecessarily, right? So you put your card, see if you walk. But if you don't have your card lost for some reason, it doesn't debar you from participating in the process.
Should you walk with another form of ID?
No other, let me make it abundantly clear, no other ID would be accepted.
Okay.
That's not important, because as was said to you, you have the ID, it is lost, you proceed based on the verification process of the presiding officer. We don't need any other, because the legislation doesn't support any other form of identification. Okay. So we have to be within the legislation, right? Some people may say, well, we could have carried that, but at the same time, we have to operate within the law, right? So at the same time, I'm saying to everyone there, you don't need to present any other form of ID. What you need to work with is your voter's registration card. If you do not have it, you still come and you satisfy the presiding officer that it was lost or one was necessary to do, and you will be given a ballot.
Would anybody wanting a new card able to get one?
Not now.
Not at this point?
No, not now.
Okay.
So as of the last date we had, right, which in some cases run into the wee hours or the early hours of 2017, because we had, offices that went up, because we had said to the public that once you were in the line at 5, we had to process. And I think all our offices had people in the line at 5. So what happened, some had more than others, and it went way into that period. So that is where we are.
Okay.
So as Mr. and I just want to reiterate the point Mr. Philip made earlier, that encourage people to go collect the card, right? We have not processed all the cards as we speak, but we are confident that all of the cards will be available for collection.
Okay.
And so we encourage the public.
We're going to visit nomination in just about a minute or so, but quickly let us know, on election day, what time does election actually start? When will the polling booths be open?
At 6.
6 o'clock.
Yeah.
What time does it end?
At 5.
Okay. Now, in the event, for example, somebody is at within the area for voting, within that line or right at the place, is that person allowed to vote, or once 5 o'clock, that's it, it's over?
No.
What's the situation?
Is the practice that once you are within the queue,
yes,
it's established. 5 o'clock, you establish, okay, these are the electors to cast the ballot, and you continue, right, to get, these people to cast the ballot.
Okay.
So, in other words, it's not just 5 and it's stop. No. We can't disenfranchise people like that. So I am saying to people, I know some people they might have different working hours. Mm-hmm. So we're encouraging them to find themselves there at 5. But we also encourage people to do that earlier.
Yeah. But the ideal thing is to please try to get there as early as possible. Yes. Okay, so let's switch a little bit and let's get into the whole importance of nomination and the process. So sort of take us through this, Mr. Philip. Tell us about nomination, the day it should happen, what are the details and requirements for that all-important event of nomination?
Yes, again, what do we say? We assume that at this point, especially the political parties, whether large or small, have identified their cadre of persons that will be representing them at each and every constituency.
Yeah.
What we have done thus far is that we have made available at every nomination center the required forms. So it's form number 3 and form number 4 or 5, as the case may be. Form number 3 is that form where persons, the potential candidates, or at this point they are called the nominees, they have to get 6 persons who are registered in the particular constituency. They have to get those persons to nominate them. So on that form, there are slots for 6 persons who are registered in that constituency to put in their names and alongside the registration number. So these are the persons that would nominate the potential candidate. On that said form, form number 3, the candidate must consent to that nomination. So these are critical things, and we want persons to be aware of that. The 6 persons duly registered in the constituency, and on that said form, the candidate himself or herself agreeing to that nomination, as the case may be. And that's form number 3. Form number 4 or 5, form number 4 basically is the statutory declaration depicting the person's qualification, to be a candidate on election day. Again, it is critical. Form number 4, the person needs to fill that one out, and it must be authenticated by a JP.
Yeah, could you give us some details about the qualifications?
For example, they should be able to read and write the English language. Yeah. Or if they are blind or incapacitated otherwise, then of course they may not be able to read, they may not be able to write, or maybe they may not be able. There are conditions that are spelled out there. They need to be a Grenadian, or a Commonwealth citizen who has met the requirement. Specifications such as that. They must not owe allegiance to any other foreign state or power. There are several categories that are highlighted there for that person, and it's written on the forms for persons to get themselves aware of, and it's part of the responsibility of the political parties or the independents to ensure that whoever goes forward as a candidate, potential candidate, meets that requirement, because you do not want, subsequent to you being nominated or maybe even being elected, then someone challenges you because you were not qualified. So we expect that they would do their due diligence. So that is, as I say, form number 4. Form number 5 basically is a duplicate of number 4, except in the case where that potential candidate cannot be in the island, has to be out of the island on nomination day. Then an agent, somebody who is appointed as an agent representing that individual, will fill out form number 5 on behalf of the potential candidate. Okay, so when persons engage the office, they need form number 3 definitely, and form number 4 or 5. Most of the cases they will take form number 4 because most persons will be there. Most persons would choose to be there. But in the minor cases where the person cannot be, and of course we have identified a few cases where persons have indicated that the potential candidate is not on island, so they have taken form number 5 to represent them. These forms are available at the offices. Now, I just want to quickly say here, 4 of our constituencies have double offices. They are St. George South, and the nomination office Wednesday coming will be the office by the Limes, as you enter the Limes there. Okay. St. David has 2 offices again, and the nomination office will be the one, PT Esperance, right next to the police station. St. George Northeast has 2 offices, and the principal office will be by Deco Service Station. And I believe St. George Southeast also has 2 offices, and again, the principal office will be in St. Paul's. Yes. I believe at the Dr. Alexis building.
In the South?
Yes. Yes, I called South already. It's by the Limes. So there are 2 offices in these constituencies I just called, and so persons should not go, although the information is made available. I do believe that all of the potential candidates are aware of this, but they will not expect, for example, St. David has an office in Pedmota, but nomination will not take place in Pedmota. It will take place at the principal office, which is in PT Esperance. Now, nomination occurs between the hours of 9 and 12 on nomination day, which is Wednesday coming, the 1st of June. Again, I want to say that it's between the hours of 9 and 12. And we want to appeal to persons because, as I heard the supervisor kept on reminding us, I might have my sentiment and he may have his sentiment, but the law is different. The law says between the hours of 9 and 12, not a minute after 12, not prior to 9 o'clock. So within that 3-hour period, nomination occurs. So the relevant documents need to be brought in at that time. One of the critical things that I didn't highlight as yet, which is different from the last general election, prior, everybody is accustomed to the $300 nomination fee or deposit. It is different now. It was amended, so it is now no longer 300, but it is now 500. And before, persons came on that nomination day with their cash, with money, cash in hand. It has been amended so that persons are now required to pay that nomination deposit into the Treasury to be held in safekeeping by the Accountant General and to come on nomination day with the receipt. Again, no longer $300, now $500, no longer coming with the money in person, but now coming with the receipt evidencing that you have paid that money. So during that period of time. So all of these things need to be gotten and done between the hours of 9 and 12.
Is it refundable?
It is refundable, but there are conditions. And again, we want to appeal because, you know, sometimes it burns my heart to see how, and I know I suffer from the very said disease also. I just feel, well, you know, couldn't you bend the rule a little bit, for me based on the circumstance? But no, the law is the law.
Yes.
And the reality is that there are conditions under which it can be refunded. For example, if on election day, if you have won your seat, you will get back your nomination deposit. Or if you have polled at least 1/8 of the votes, you will get back your nomination deposit. Or unfortunately, if you die before the close of poll on election day, you will get back your deposit.
Oh, ironic.
Or if you withdraw within the provisions that are given by the law, again, you can get back. But no other condition allows you to get back that deposit of $500. So we want persons to be aware of that. If we begin to then apply our sentiments to the process, then we don't have law, we don't have rule, but it's recognized that these are the conditions. You either win, or having not won, you poll 1/8 of the votes, or you, as I said, unfortunately, you die, or you withdraw within the provisions of the law prior to election day.
Right. So the nominees, of course, they fill the forms as the case may be. Who are the ones to adjudicate over these entries? Right.
So presently, our what we referred to, and you have heard it so many times over the last years, we refer to them as registration officers. They are now referred to, they have taken the oath, and they are returning officers. So at every constituency on nomination day, these persons will be there, and I guess they will be there before time to prepare. But the process itself starts at 9 o'clock, and at every constituency, a returning officer for that constituency will be there to conduct that process.
Okay, so they can say, look, we're not very happy about what we've seen on this form, and this person may not be eligible to be part of the whole, or to stand as a candidate.
Well, again, all within the confines of the law. And I do remember hearing a discussion recently where someone who came to put forward themselves as a candidate did not have, and they came a few minutes, very close to 12 o'clock, but they did not fill out that form properly. They did not have the registered persons. And so they rushed outside, I understood, trying to get persons within the constituency to sign that form. And as was indicated, they reached back 1 minute past 12. And that was the end of that.
Interesting that.
Yeah. So yes, the returning officer, based on the parameters of the law, the scope of the law that is given to them, can make that determination. I'm sorry, you have not met the requirements.
Okay. we had a situation a few years ago, and of course I don't really want to delve back into that, but those things do happen, of course. I think the Honorable Peter David, when he was on the other side, so to speak, there was this case that came up in regards to dual citizenship. And in the end, I think it was verified. Do we see any situations that may arise to cause concern, or has it been over the years, it's been pretty smooth? I know that you all have not been in the office right through, but I think by and large it's been okay.
Yeah, I think it's okay because as Mr. Philip mentioned earlier, in terms of the qualification for being nominated as a candidate, it's very clear, right? So maybe I don't even sure, and correct me if I'm wrong, if it was a situation of the electoral office at the time, or more or less people who were outside saying something, because when you're coming there, you look at the form, you make sure that the form is filled properly, and of course it satisfies the returning officer. That is, so you have your people as the witness to the whole thing. Mm-hmm. It's a very simple process, you understand? And of course, it is authenticated, as you said, by a GP, who will, I suppose, it would ask you questions as to make sure that it is representative of the truth that you have on the nomination form.
Yes, so these nominees, so to speak, are they more likely they will be representing a particular political party? What if there is somebody registered and then subsequent, still within the ambits and hours of the registration period, say, look, we want to withdraw this particular candidate and we'd like to have somebody else inserted? Is there anything that speaks to that?
That is a good one. To be honest, perusing the legislation, I guess you are saying that a political party who has put forward a candidate who met the requirements on nomination day, then changes its mind?
Yes.
To be honest, that's a conundrum for us, but I don't think the legislation speaks to that.
But if it does happen, we're going to be in a spot of a bother, would we?
Well, and I'll just give my own personal opinion here, with all due respect. If the person met the requirements on election day, I think this may end up in court, but it's a good question, and it probably needs a little looking into.
Well, interesting. Maybe it's something that we should look at. Strange enough, some very unorthodox things do happen at times.
What I do know is that it makes provision for someone to withdraw his or her nomination. I am not sure how it will fit into an organization saying to you, to look at that. So it's something that we have to look at and maybe get some, it might be wise that we get some guidance on it before nomination.
Right. Thank you so much. Well, we're going to take a break now, and when we come back, we'll give callers an opportunity, of course, to get onto the program. I suspect you would have some salient questions out there that you'd want to shoot at these two gentlemen. We'll be right back.
Adventist presents the Bible Speaks Empowerment series with international evangelist and motivational speaker, Pastor Marvin Smith. Join us for this life-changing series starting Saturday, 21st of May and continuing nightly at Maribor Seventh-day Adventist Church in St. Andrews. Come experience powerful preaching and practical solution to life's challenges from the Word of God. This dynamic series will also be streamed live at 7 p.m. nightly on Mission Life GND via YouTube and Facebook. Connect with us. It will be pure awesomeness.
Introducing Color by Seasons. Color by Seasons. Color by
morning, Grenlec meter reader.
Morning, Mr. Meterman. I'm glad I caught you. Last month, I got a very high bill, and I don't understand why.
Last month, we were not able to access your meter, so we had to estimate the bill.
So what can I do to ensure that my meter is easily accessible?
Well, you can get your licensed electrician to move your meter outside of the gate or directly in front of the house.
Well, I'll consider that.
Grenlec, energizing our Grenada.
Get Rubigas. Get cooking. Rubigas, clean, safe, and reliable LPG is the perfect solution for your commercial and everyday needs. For cooking at home or barbecuing, choose Rubigas LPG cylinders. Available in a variety of sizes from 20 to 100 pound cylinders. Rubigas LPG, clean, safe, reliable. Are you cooking with Rubigas?
Get Rubis, get going.
The most anticipated family fun-filled event on the GBN calendar is back. The Maggie King of the Grill. Join us on June 4th at Montrouge. Be part of the culinary masterpiece as the best grillers on island compete for the coveted title of the Maggie King of the Grill. Think you have what it takes? Be part of the action. June 4th. Book your spot. If not, step away from the grill. If you can't handle the heat. Maggie King of the Grill is sponsored by Maggie, Matook's Barbecue Sauce, Rubis, Dasani Water, Calico Shopping Center, Duty Free Caribbean, and Siesta Hotel.
And welcome back. So let's go to our registration list, voters list. What's the situation with it as it stands now?
Okay, so we have, as of today, the publication of the current voters list, right?
Yes.
Electors, they have to peruse. You know, people, we encourage the entire voting population to check to make sure that they are in the right polling division.
And do they know where to check?
Right, yes. We have, strategically it sets up in and it has been like that for many years. Okay. So we have each, polling station where you can check.
Right.
So, but also we have the online that people can enter the name and the information will come as to which polling station or polling division they belong to. And they can, if they don't have doubt, then they can call the office and verify as to where exactly, that. Especially if they are first-time voters, right?
So could you give our viewers some information about the online process, where they need to go?
Mr. Philip would speak to that.
Okay, so great.
So, but let me just say this. So then what happened after this? Now, today we publish a list, and the people generally, it's not just about yourself. Mm-hmm. And I spoke earlier relative to us, all of us helping to really give integrity to the process. So we are encouraging electors to check the list. They tend to know a lot of things that we do not know, and they can put forward claims, especially when it affects them claim. So if my name spelled wrong, if I had the wrong PD, if my name didn't appear on the list, I put forward a claim, and the objection is for somebody who recognized something and said, well, no, that this is not correct. But I want to caution, the public that objections as well as claim is a very detailed process, very detailed, because we cannot just arbitrarily remove someone from the list or add somebody. We must have sufficient, it must be conclusive that we do that. So we are asking to make sure, especially now where you have a very short window, because you have 7 days, from this publication, 7 days. So on the 7th of June would be your last day for filing, that kind of objection. Right. Now, what we're asking the public and the electors to do is to make sure that they not just come in with bare information, but substantiate the claim or the objection. So it makes the process one where we don't have to come back and appeal to you for additional information.
Okay.
It makes the process like that. So I don't expect people to just put out objection for objection's sake, but you must have information to back that application that you're making. So we are saying to the entire voting public, don't just look and take a hunch, but look deeper and come forward with at least evidence so that it makes the process as seamless as possible, because the window is very tight, to do that. So I just want that, so Mr. Philip could talk about the elections.
Any details about online? Where should people go?
Yes, our website is peogrenada.org. Again, let me repeat, peogrenada.org. And when you go onto that website, critical for the as a convenience, you go on to search voters list, and you can do it through one of two manners. You can either input your registration number, or you can input your name and surname. Now I'm highlighting that because what you recognize is that whereas previously persons, it was second nature just to go to your various places, whether post office or private residence, a shop or whatever, courthouse, and you check the list. In these modern times, it's like writing letters. You know, you wrote letters by nature a long time, but now who writes letters, quote unquote? The list is available online. Okay. And so persons hardly go to those physical places, but by law, we need to post them there. But you go onto that website, peogrenada.org, you input your name and surname, which may be easier. Not everybody may remember a registration number, but you input your name and surname, or you input the registration number if you have it, and your information will come up. I must say that we have heard persons, indicated that they attempted to and they could not, and sometimes I got the feeling that they were trying to blame the office. It is very likely an issue with the device that is being used, your device. But generally, most of the times you do it, most persons have had high ratings when they went onto that website. And today I actually tried it because elections are in the air and our polling stations are finalized now. Yes. I clicked on the select button. So I'm saying to the general public, be mindful. When you go onto that website, you input your name and surname, or you input your registration number. Your registration information will come up highlighted. It's going to say the basic information that goes on the list: your name, your surname, your address, whether you're male or female, your occupation, and polling division. And when you click on the select button, which is critical because persons need to know where they are voting, it's going to show you the exact place where you are voting.
All right. My producer just in fact informed that information is on the screen there, so our viewers can look there and get that sort of information. Continue, please.
Yes, so that is made available to the general public. And as Mr. Morin indicated, for those of us who are from the old school, you can call the office, the constituency offices, and the information can be gotten. Maybe for the older folks who are not all that computer savvy, because a lot of us, this is new to us, there must be someone, a grandchild, a son, a daughter, whatever, who can facilitate you in that process. Instead of you having to pay $250 to motor to a physical location to get that information, somebody can just click online and get the information for you. Okay,
we're going to have a little break now. I think we've got a call on the line. Caller, thank you for calling. Go right ahead.
Good evening.
Good evening.
No, I get about in a wheelchair. That's how I get along.
Yes.
And I have a vehicle which can take me into the schoolyard where the voting is taking place. And that would be South St. George Government School. I would like to find out whether I can remain in the vehicle rather than having to go through the hassle of getting out of the vehicle, whether I can remain in the vehicle and have 2 witnesses or 2 clerks, whatever, witness me vote rather than having to get out of the vehicle because it's a hazard.
Okay, caller, thank you so very much. Are there any provisions in regards to this or similar situations where people are handicapped in one way or the other? Well, let's say pertinent to the caller.
No, you have to get into the polling booth, right? What we do, we construct ramps here at our polling station. And because, as I said earlier, we have to stick to the legislation, right? So you have to get into the presiding officer. There are a few questions they would ask, and you get in there. So, and what we do also is that once, like as the caller said, if she, I suppose, is supposed to be a female, if she remains in the vehicle, what we can do is try to expedite the process, right? We can assist her, so you have her given that privilege to not to sit in the vehicle forever, but you can make that request and we expedite the process so at least she can, be accommodated.
Okay, we're going to touch more a little bit about that. We've got another call on the line. Caller, go right ahead, please.
Indeed, Mr. Worme, good evening. Greetings and greetings to your guests.
Greetings, Citizen Rolo.
Listen, I have a serious case here. According to the so-called constitution of this here country, Article 32, subsection 3, the election should be conducted by ballot, and the ballot should be conducted in a manner as, quote-unquote, not to disclose who the elector votes for. A synonymous way of saying that is that it should be done in secret, or should I say, instead of should, has to be obligatorily done in secret. The RPA in section 67, subsection 4, says that I must enter the polling booth with a quote-unquote friend. There's a contradiction there where the law is violating the Constitution. In addition, the United Nations Convention Article 5 gives me right to non-discrimination and equality. Article 23, the right to privacy. Article 29 gives me the right to total participation in all political activities in my country. But the electoral authority for the third election cycle since 2012, when I denounced my right to a secret ballot, and options were shown to the authority on how we were able to overcome this problem up to date. They're telling me that they have the law, and that's what the law says, and that's how they have to work it, insulting my intelligence and making me look as nothing in this here country, violating my rights. I cannot accept that anymore. And I think it is just about time that these people end the spate of scornful disdain to the people with disabilities, particularly in this case, the visually impaired, and give them the right to a secret ballot. Because, as I repeat, it contravenes the law, the Constitution, and the United Nations Convention on the Rights of People with Disabilities. I want my right to a secret ballot, and we have demonstrated to you how it can be done. Thank you very much, Mr. Worme, and have a nice evening, will you?
Thank you, Citizen Rolo. It's pertinent, isn't it? And it has been a salient concern, and not just within the whole electoral process, but I think that we have not treated our people with disabilities very well over the years in our country. And I would not digress too much into it, but it's something that we need to look at. These individuals, they have some lack, they have some physical challenges, as the case may be, and I think they need to be given the kind of credence. And of course, Citizen Rolo is saying basically the same thing. I am visually impaired. Does that interfere in any way with my constitutional right? Should I not be treated as well as anybody else in the country that is not visually impaired or visually handicapped or physically handicapped, as the case may be? What's the situation?
If I can answer Citizen Rolo, I want to disagree with Citizen Rolo in the sense that...
On the
grounds that he said he has been treated with scorn. I totally disagree. I think he's one of the most listened to individual, on the media ways. When he comes on, people sit up and they take notice. And I believe every one of us could probably attest to the fact that we have learned a thing or two from him. Unfortunately, and I do understand the points that he's raising, and he has echoed them on several platforms, that based on the Constitution and in terms of the RPA, there seems to be, there's not a mesh, it's not a marriage of that situation. But again, we have to go according to what the legislation says, although privately in discussions and in our own sentiment we may say, yes, I do see what he's saying. And as I said recently, I urge him and other persons, to continue to agitate, for and not just in his case, but there are other cases. For example, that the lady who called in the case of the wheelchair. We look at electoral reform, and we're talking about electoral matters, but in every circumstance, in every entity, there is always room for reform. I'm one of the first persons, I always love that song that Winston Gypsy Peters sang. I think it is a classic. Right, yesterday's children. We've got to treat them good.
Right.
Well, tomorrow comes, if you're lucky, you may become yesterday's children too. But not only that, or persons who are challenged, as he has indicated that he is. And, so please do not feel, whether it is Citizen Rolo or any other individual who might have a challenge, that the office is, deliberately treating you with scant, respect. That is not the case. And as I said, even with his agitation, as well as others, discussions are being had. But unfortunately, sometimes the wheels of change grind slowly.
Yes. Well, my personal I'll come back to you. But my personal feeling is this: when we've got people who are what you may call less fortunate, handicapped, impaired in one way or the other, I don't know if they're the ones who should be really agitating. I think that they're other individuals who are skilled and who should be of benevolent heart and should plead their cause. And sometimes I think the main individuals whose cause should be pleaded are not, and that really gets me concerned. But we're going to come back. Let's go to a caller that has been holding. Caller, thank you, and thank you for holding. Go right ahead.
Yes, hello. It's me again. I am not sure whether I did understand your response to my question concerning remaining in the vehicle and having me exercise my right in the presence of two witnesses. So can you repeat it, please? Thank you.
Yes, thank you very much. I said no. You have to get yourself into the boat. And I said we make ramps available because I think you said that you are in a wheelchair. And as I was saying that when you get to the vehicle, whoever with you can make the request and we try to expedite the process. So of course, you wouldn't have to sit in the vehicle for very long. So we try to accommodate you, in that way. But as it is now, we do not vote in a vehicle. You have to get into the polling station to vote.
But at our polling stations, are all the infrastructures in place so that you can accommodate such individuals?
Yes, so we construct ramps.
Okay.
To get, if somebody come with a wheelchair, we can get them in. Okay. So that is where we are in terms of at this time.
Okay, let's go back to the telephone line. Caller, good evening. Go right ahead with your comment or caller.
Hello, good night.
Yes, go ahead.
I just want to place a question for your two guests tonight. One, I want to know the concerned citizens of Grenada. How much Chinese that have citizenship and they live in here are registered to vote, and what constituency they will be voting? You get it clear?
That's interesting. I just wondered why you selected one particular nationality or ethnic grouping. So the question is, how many Chinese?
To answer that simple. We don't register Chinese. We register Grenadians and we register Commonwealth citizen.
Okay, but if the Chinese...
So it's when you come there, because China is not part of the Commonwealth. So you come, we register either Grenadians or we register Commonwealth citizens.
Okay, so is every citizen of Grenada entitled to vote?
Yeah, because the requirement is clear in the Constitution as well as the Act. It says that what you did, what qualifies you to register. So when we register, we don't try to predict who you are or where you're from. What we want to make sure is that you have the documents, right? So you come with a citizenship certificate or your passport, you have a birth certificate, right? And you meet the other requirement, we register you. You come as a Commonwealth citizen, you come with your birth certificate or your passport, and of course you take the declaration is done. So we don't try to disaggregate in terms of who or where you are to predict, because when you come there, you don't come as whoever you look or whoever you might. So that's what it is.
Okay. By the way, I should have asked this a little early on when you do the figures and the comparisons. What does the figure look like? Has there been an upsurge in the electorate now, or what do the figures say?
Yes, the figures actually, it's in the high 80s of thousands. I can't give the exact figures here, but we have quite a few persons on and I guess what you're asking, who are the persons, how many persons are on the electorate? Yes. The electorate refers to the amount of persons that are registered and thus eligible to vote on elections day. It's in the high 80s of thousands.
How do you compare that with the last elections?
I believe last election it was around 78,000 approximately.
Okay, so we probably have a good 10,000 more.
Yeah, we have had an increase of persons. And the 2013 elections, I believe we were around the 50-something thousand person mark.
Okay, we've got a call online. We'll come back to you, Mr. Moraine. Caller, good evening. Thanks for holding. Go ahead.
Hello, good evening. Thanks for taking my call. I'm calling on behalf of a friend who is currently residing in the United States of America. He voted in the last general election and he migrated about 6 months after. He's desirous of coming back to Grenada to vote in the upcoming election. He would like to know if there is any residency qualification in that. Well, I asked him what that means, and he tell me how long he must be residing in Grenada before he can vote. And he gave me the example. He says, suppose I come in on the 3 days before the elections, can I go and vote? He tell me he heard that a legal requirement is that one should be residing here at least 3 months before polling date. So could you give me a response on that, please? And good night.
Thank you, caller. I appreciate your call.
The person was a Grenadian, right?
Yes, and voted in the last.
All right, so the person is a Grenadian, voted in the last election, if I get that right. The last election was just about 4 years ago, right? Now, a Grenadian has to be out of Grenada for above 5 years to be removed from the list, right? So in that case, I believe that once the citizen of Grenada should be on the list, and that's what is the most important thing.
Yes.
I don't know any requirement about a Grenadian having to leave wherever, you know.
And having to be in the state at a particular time. So even if the person comes to the country on election day, he or
once
she
they
can.
are duly registered, they can, yeah.
Okay, great.
And just if I can just quickly add, it's unfortunate that a lot of these kinds of misinformation go out there, and when they go out there, they are like a wildfire in dry season. They spread. It's difficult to contain them, and persons tend to believe that. But again, just to appeal to all of us, you know, because the legislation caters for the input of the general population, to be really careful with the kind of information that we are putting out there.
Okay. Do we have a call on the line? We do? Yes, we have a caller. Good evening, caller. Thanks for holding. Go ahead.
All right. I want to ask this question. If I live in Mount Parnassus, my house, everything is in Mount Parnassus, I could go and register in town to vote in town?
That's the question?
And I have another part.
Okay, so could you give your other part? So we take both of them. We take note of both of them.
The next one is, if as the registration closed on what time, the last time, and people, in everything you have scheme, you go and vote after that registration closed, and true information that happened, what step could be taken and of the people that register after?
That last question, we're a little confused about it. You're talking about people voting after the polls are closed? Okay, well, I think we lost that last question, but
the first part of a question in reference to someone living wherever and registering, right? Now, we always talk about meeting the requirement for registration. So that person, when they get into the office, questions will be asked, right? Now, there are times you're asked to provide, most of the time, to provide proof of ordinary residence. No, so in that case, the person would have to provide that proof. Now, prior to that amendment, people were going and say, well, look, I'm living there. No, the information also had to be verified by the registration officer. That could be a difficult process because, in other words, you have to be there all the time sufficiently to know that that person is not living there. Or you go once and the person is there. Doesn't mean that the person is living there. You have also on that residency issue where someone can be equally sharing residence. It's like you have your family, or people might move in with somebody, but so in that case, the Act make provision for that person making a choice, all right? And what the caller is alluding to, what helps us in that is the claims and the objections. So if you knowingly that this person, you check the list and that person is there, but you don't know that person, you are an elector in that constituency and you don't know this, I don't know Elvis Moore living here, all right? You can object. Right, but I say you must have information to object.
And who do you object to?
The registration officer.
Oh, you do object to. Okay. Let's talk about a very important subject matter, because we're still in
I wanted to make one point on the Rolo issue before we
okay, go ahead.
So going back to the issue that Rolo raised, I think is one that we can debate about. I mean, he is spot on with the concern raised, and is one that we have to address. No, I heard him, not the first time, I heard him say before that he had shared information as to how it could be done. I would be happy to engage Rolo to find out how, because I don't have the how. I mean, I just taken up this role. And I want to guarantee him that once I get that information, we would move to make sure the requisite amendments are made to accommodate that. So I want to put that out there for him tonight.
Okay, great. And I know that he's listening.
Yeah.
Let's look at the COVIDic situation that still prevails in the country, in the region, in the world as a whole. Is this a concern in regards to your department on election day? Is there anything in place? Is there any distancing? What obtains concerning that?
Right, and very good question. Of course, we had concerns. As a matter of fact, prior to if we want to call it relax or discontinuing of the protocol, we've had a very useful engagement with the Ministry of Health, because as I said, we were preparing and we were anticipating that election might just happen in a COVID period. So at that time we had a useful discussion as to what should happen. That though is out. Now what we want to say from where we sit is that we want to encourage people to wear the mask. Right?
Okay.
Wear the mask. I know sometimes people they're anxious to cast the ballot, and it can be a kind of very tedious. There are period of high points on the day of election, and sometimes it's difficult to manage. So we ask people to take personal responsibility for that. Now, I want to touch though, and someone who might be COVID positive and want to cast the ballot. So while we do not have any thing in terms of the protocol as that, I would want to encourage that person to contact the returning officer, right? And we would make special arrangement to accommodate. But of course, again, it has to happen in the booth. So take all the precautionary measures to make sure. So in other words, that person wouldn't come and have to wait in the line, but we'd have to expedite that particular thing. So we give more detail when that is, I have an engagement with the CMO to detail that. He was out of state, of course. So we sit down and we will be able to give a little more detail to the public as how it's going to happen.
Okay. Oh, that's interesting, and we really do hope that you don't have much of that sort of situation, which can cause some measure of concern. So, is there any other particular concern that you have looked at carefully outside of the COVID, but there might be other situations that you'd want to alert the public about, educate them about, highlight so that they would be aware of this? Now, you talk also about the mask. That's not mandatory, is it?
Exactly.
But it is recommended.
We're encouraging, yeah. So that's why I say the whole protocol is basically non-existent. But we are still asking the general voting public to be responsible and to understand that COVID is still very much alive, right? And so you don't risk yourselves as well as others. So we are asking people to do that. So we cannot enforce anything because we don't have that authority. We have to work with, we don't know if anything will be upscaled by that time, but what we want to make sure is that people take personal responsibility for protecting themselves, right, during that period. So it's something we want to do. We also want to encourage, people on election day to be patient, right? To display some level of tolerance. Order. Maybe at some time we know that the lines can be very long.
Yeah.
But we ask people to be patient because at the end of the day we want to make sure that the process happens as seamless as possible.
Okay.
So we ask people to follow the directions of the marshals on the day that would aid in terms of pointing them into which direction they need to go so that they can because the orderly we do this is the quicker we get out of it.
Okay.
Right? So I want to encourage people to go out as early as possible, but also be patient in terms of the process.
We have a call on the line. Caller, thank you again for holding. Good evening. Welcome.
Yes, good evening. A pleasant good night. Thank you for having me here. My concern.
Caller, you're very low. If you can just up your volume a bit,
do you
we'll
hear
be
me
happy.
now? Hello?
Yes, take a shot at it again. Just lift your voice a bit.
I would just like to say I agree with the previous caller concerning the privacy right and the most vulnerable in society. And what I would say is any law that is inconsistent with the Constitution is in effect null and void. So it is totally not acceptable to say, well, it is the law, etc. You can't say that. If that law is inconsistent with the supreme law of the land, which is the Constitution, it is null and void. That is the first point. The second point is, clearly he says that his words are going on deaf ears, etc. I would advise him to make a constitutional motion or get a declaration from the court. Simple. And force Parliament to make the requisite change. Because in this day and age, it is unacceptable to say something is the law when that law is, in effect, contrary to the Constitution. There is no law that trumps the Constitution. So he has a valid point, and I would advise him to go to the court. Go by a lawyer, get a declaration from the court or a constitutional motion, and that would end the matter right there. Because clearly, in effect, his words are falling on deaf ears. That's what it seems to him and seems to me also. That's my humble opinion. Thank you for having me.
Okay, thank you so much. And of course, there is validity there, and there's some people that are listened more than other people. And I really hope that for the good of our country, the good of our nation, that everybody's voice would be treated with credence and everybody would be given the same sort of respect that is due to them. Even the less fortunate people, they're as important to us and to the nation as anybody else. So we certainly have taken note of that caller. Thank you very much. Let's go back to colors, or go to colors rather, because we've got colors all over the place. Green and yellow, they have been littering the atmosphere in Grenada. Come election day, can anybody go to the booth with vivid green or vivid yellow? Is there anything to suggest that I can't go with something yellow or green, or any other color representing a particular political party or person?
Unfortunately, I didn't, do my homework in that area. I do. There is, in terms of election offenses and so forth, there are guidelines that are given in relation to that. But I do not want to speak to it at this moment, which may lead to me misguiding persons. But there are guidelines. There are limitations, but there are allowances also in terms of the extent to which someone, can demonstrate a particular color that may influence a particular, in support or against a particular party.
Well, it's probably something that we can clarify subsequently, I believe, because obviously I have heard people talk about it, and I've heard people also saying on the day of the election they're going to go with a particular color. They would not have any identification on it per se, whether it's a heart or whether it's a house, but they will go there with a color, and they're saying it's certainly within their constitutional right, if you want to put it that way. But I just thought that should be clarified, seeing that there are some questionable issues there.
Yeah, and I believe, as you indicated, as I said, because I didn't research it just recently, I don't want to speak to it, but it's the gist of what you just said. In wearing the color, you are not preventing from wearing a particular color, but to the extent that it may influence, for example, and the wording, I believe, when I looked at it just maybe about a month ago, vote for, something like you cannot go too extreme in the material that may be written on that. But in terms of wearing a particular color, you do have some leeway there.
Mm-hmm. Okay, thank you very much. We've got a call on the line. Caller, go right ahead, please.
Greetings, and good night.
Go ahead.
Are you hearing me?
Yes, I am. We are.
Okay, I'm happy to get you 3 or 4 points, briefly. One, in terms of the question that was posed by you, the host, Brother Worme, to the panelists, having an organization coming, after one is being nominated, and having to have request a withdrawal of that individual. And the response we got from the panel is, one said that it is a conundrum, a very, very, very difficult situation, which needs to be addressed maybe with some amendment. I want to say here, because your panelists all the time talking about misinformation. So just for general information, let me say here that both the Constitution and the election law do not make reference to any organization, much more political organization. And in fact, the same forms that he made reference to, in particular Form 3 on the schedule, the third schedule of the Act, it talks about 6 electors. That means individuals coming to nominate that candidate. So it has nothing to do, and it should not be made, the public shouldn't be made that, listen, a political party or someone, and even an individual is to nominate someone. Once this is done, what happens afterwards is of non-consequence. Secondly, reference to Brother Rolo's concern, let me say to Mr. Worme, the supervisor of election, you must make it your duty, and the office should make it its duty, to get or be in contact with Mr. Rolo soonest. There's no need to have an amendment to the RPA to effect Mr. Rolo and any others in that capacity to vote come the 23rd of June. The mere fact that certain things from your office can be done with discretion, effectiveness, without a legal teeth. You talk about the wardens who will be there on election day. This is not provided for in the Act. We have the expiry date situation. There's no amendment about that, and it's what's been done. Common sense will say, once it is practical and feasible, and I think it is. It's a simple procedure. There's no need. And I bring me to my third point. About the wheel of justice take time. We make it take time. In fact, most of the issues that have been raised, hidden issues, vexing issues about the electoral system have been raised years, decades, including from 2013. And there is no substantial electoral reform that has been done. So our way of ducking is to say, come, it's difficult now. Let us wait until the next election cycle, then we'll address it. This is how we're kicking the ball down. And finally, the fourth point, because I know I have to go, I want to congratulate you, Mr. Moore in particular, your office. I want to recommend to you that the advertisement which I have heard sometime from last month, and particularly on We FM, that you make it your duty, as from tomorrow, as from yesterday, have this advertisement on all the leading radio stations and television stations, so that Tom, Dick, and Harry can be well informed about the procedure for voting, in particular, the importance of having the voter registration card. In that late time, we can be sending mixed signals to get the people confused. And it's no sense in having one particular message on one media and then none or another message on another media. I want to recommend to you, sir, your office, respectfully, as from yesterday, get that promotion, which I congratulate you 1,000%, and have it been aired on even the national station, GBN, Mr. Worme. It is also your corporate responsibility to serve the public correctly and get this advertisement and have it been ponged on all throughout the day until 23rd of June, so that we can be well informed to go there and vote. At least not totally informed, but well informed, to assist us in having free and fair election. Work on this thing, Mr. Moore. It can be done. Please accommodate Brother Rolo. There's no need for amendment. Go through it. We are the one who retarding and delaying what has to be done. Thank you very much.
Thank you, caller. Well, it's been quite a mouthful there. Any response?
I just want to thank, the caller for the points raised. And if I think I have the voice right. That particular caller has been constantly, trying to educate and share light, on the whole process. And I want to thank him for that. And the suggestion made, I think he gave me a mandate. So I have to follow through on this, but I think it's some very pointed observations that were made.
Yeah.
And I want to say thank you.
Yeah, we've got to be careful, because very often Grenada has been criticized about taking too long to get very salient, important subject matter looked at and implemented, and that's something I think we need to look at very closely. We've got another caller on the line. Caller, good evening. Welcome to the program.
Good night. I'm calling. I have a question. I want to know if you're living you're living in Maran in St. John's, right? And you have to still register in St. Max. I want to know what is what is going on with this.
Aaron, you want to register in St. Mark? We just got couple of weeks to elections. What possibilities are there?
I get it right, though. And the caller went off, right?
Yeah, the caller is off.
Because Maran is supposed to be part of St. Mark's, not so? So I don't get it right.
I think the idea is that you want to move from one particular constituency to another. Can you still do that at this point?
No, you can't do it at this time. You have to do it after the election, unless you have somebody objecting to it, or unless it was an error on behalf of the office. The person is already, because anything that come to register now, we can't register.
Okay.
If it's a correction, we can correct it. But I'm sure I wish the caller had maybe expounded a bit more, because I'm not sure if I got it right.
Yes. Let me ask here. Once there are human beings involved, obviously it's human to err. And obviously there'll be people all over the country there's some people who view things with suspicion. Everything becomes suspicious for them. Is there any assurance that can be given to the populace, indeed, that this is transparent, and people who've been talking about rigging, is there any possibilities there at all? And if there is, what are the chances? That's something that you'd want to address, but I want to put that on hold because we've got a call on the line. We want to be respectful to the caller. Good evening, caller.
Yeah, good evening, Brother Worme. Good evening to your panelists, right? Maran, geographically, is in the parish of St. John. But but it is you register in the constituency of St. Mark. That has been there in the legislation from a very long time now.
Ooh.
People who live in Maran, geographically, they are in St. John. But from the constituency standpoint, they are in St. Mark. So you do not have to transfer from Maran to St. Mark, because Maran become part of St. Mark from the electoral process.
Interesting that. Is it something that you're aware of?
No, I wasn't aware.
Yes, but I do believe it was.
I know Maran because I'm in approving card. I see that, but I wasn't sure about the geographic thing. But it's something that we.
Interesting that. It's the first time I'm hearing that.
Yeah, I think it has to do with the boundary delimitation, how the boundaries are cut. I believe the caller is right.
Okay. Is that something that would be looked into, or it's not necessary, is it?
Well, it's legal. Yeah. Based on the discussions I remember that were engaged in previously, it is legal. It's not that persons are registered in a different constituency.
Okay.
It's just based on how the boundaries are dissected. Maran, St. John, persons do end up in a different constituency.
Wow.
But yes, persons would feel uncomfortable. Why it is I am in St. John and I'm somewhere else.
Interesting that. But it's not a disadvantage to anyone, is it?
No, really. Well, I guess if the individual feels that they live in St. John and they want to support a candidate in St. John, but based on how it's broken up, they are actually reflected in St. Mark, they may feel aggrieved.
Okay.
But in terms of, disenfranchising an individual, that is not the case. And what affects the goose also affects the gander.
Okay. Thank you. Could we go back to the whole idea of how authentic, is there any transparency? Is there possibilities of all these human errors affecting a general election or the outcome?
I would say, Pastor, that this is something that that I would not, because I always tell my workers, you can't always put your neck on the block for everybody. This is collective, right? It means, therefore, that all of us, the integrity of the process means that everyone must do what he or she has to do, right? So what we have done is to make sure we do our checks, to make sure we do the education side of the thing, to ensure that people are maintaining the integrity of the process. So, and it starts from since someone comes in to register. right? Since someone comes into register, to make sure we have this right. And as I said, part of the list, and that list and sterilizing the list, there are a lot of components to it. And one of the strengths of that is the claims and objection. Okay. So that is in terms of the list point of view. We have to look now in terms of the operations on the day, right, of election, because the lists have to be prepared. And to make sure that the poll workers are properly oriented to do what, that they ought to do on that day. So you don't suppress anyone, you don't bring any undue influence on anything, so you have two levels: the preparation, building up, as well as the day of election, what happens. And as I said, as an office, we continue to strengthen that level of awareness, and to make sure that everyone would stand scrutiny and would hold that collective integrity of the process together by their execution of what they do on the day. Everyone who is involved in this process must make sure that you have to understand, and we have been emphasizing that in all of our training, to let people know that this is not about what you think, but it is about what the law says and what you ought to do, right? So we know that people feel mistrust. People question everything. I mean, I see sometimes people come to us and while they can't go on the system, but we give them a tour as to how things are supposed to be, operating. And people still have the doubt, as to this could happen, that could happen, The good thing about the system is that everything you do on the system, there's a log, right? So if you challenge something, you can pull the evidence and show,
Okay, if somebody comes to you gloating, bragging over the fact that I was transferred from one constituency to another, and the prerequisites for doing so, the requirements for doing so, I didn't have to go through that. I didn't have to prove anything about renting, or I didn't have to bring in any ID, that sort of thing. And they come to you bragging about that without having to follow the protocols involved. What should you do in that case?
You mean coming to me?
No, like somebody comes to me and say, hey, I was moved from this particular constituency to this one, and I did not have to go through the necessary requirements. Is there an obligation on my part, for example, to say anything about that?
Well, yes, you have an obligation, all right? But as I said, somebody telling you this doesn't mean that it happens, right? Because I can tell that doesn't mean that it happens. But it's enough for you to raise some sort of flag, but you may need to get some more information to say, okay, look, this is happening. Because people could say it. So I believe in that case is that a confession doesn't mean that really you are guilty. So what needs to happen is you may need to probe a little, but you have a responsibility, somebody receiving it, to make sure that you can aid in the integrity of the process, right? Because it ought not to happen.
All right. Okay, so the election is coming up. It's due in a couple of weeks. Are there any regional, international bodies that will be coming in to look, to observe, hey, is this going free and fair? There are countries that do that very often, invite agencies to come in. Is there any such individuals or agency coming in?
Right. The thing is that this doesn't originate from the electoral office, all right? So I would have to double check to see if that, has been done. But I think we have always had, so I don't want to say anything with that concern, because I don't have anything conclusive.
Good. So we just have just about 3 more minutes on the program. Any final thoughts? Any final encouragements you want to give to the people out there? Anything that you probably felt you could have said and did not say? I'll give you 45 seconds.
Okay. All I want to say is, well, thanks for having us. And I want to thank the callers for sharing the insight, the comments, and so on. But most importantly, I want to encourage all of Grenada to make sure that we contribute to the free and fair election process. Let us do what we have to do. And everyone has a responsibility to ensure that we impart information that is accurate, Okay, you can help us in this regard. You can also come out and look at, how and what we need to do in terms of making sure that on the polling day things are happening the way it ought to happen and so on. But Pastor Worme, I want to make this point, not relative to this election, and to just make some pitch here.
Yes.
And I want to say to the general public that I see going forward that there's some critical things that need to happen. One, we must honestly look at true electoral reform. And that is likely to be hinged on constitutional reform. So whoever, right, I think we still need to make a pitch with the right approach, because that would give us some leverage in having a strong system. I always tell the people at my office, and I said it earlier, it's not about personal attack. So I want to also look at how we administrate the electoral process. Going into maybe electoral commission. Unlike, you have a public officer like myself, taking on the role of supervisor. We need to move forward so at least you can have more confidence from the public in the system. It's something I would want to see happen. The other thing I believe that we need to address is the issue of an up-to-date software to support our electronic system. Right, the one we have 10 years, and to me, I highlighted earlier the issue of people come in and we can't update the application, but we have to do a new thing and all of that, and have to remove people from the list and so on. I think we need to get a software. For example, right now, I can't say how many new registrants I had, and I should be able to pull a report, to give that. I have heard people make certain claims. Oh, look, this is happening, and you have a lot of people from one particular geographic space coming to register. I should be able to pull a report and say, listen, this, is so, or this is not so. So I think we need to invest in a proper software that would help us to do that. We also need to address,
10 seconds.
Philip said, the whole electoral boundary commission. That needs to be addressed. And we need to get into GPS in the whole technology. We bring that to bear. So it makes a lot of these things seamless, So once again, I want to thank you very much for having us. And I want to say to the public, let us contribute to making sure that the election happens in a manner that all of us can be proud of at the end of the day.
Mr. Philip.
Some quick pointers. Persons be guided that electronic devices like phones and such are not allowed in the voting booth. The basket will be provided for persons to just deposit them just as they go to cast their vote and collected after. Reminder to persons to please come with your card. It's going to expedite the whole process, but especially for persons who are transfers. Again, I want to emphasize, especially for transfers, we appeal to you to walk with your card on election day. We want to appeal to the hospitality of Grenadians. There will be pregnant women, there will be persons with other challenges on election day. Please facilitate them. The marshals will be there to assist, but we appeal to persons to facilitate anybody who may be in such a situation. And finally, I would also say, even now you know that you will be participating in the upcoming general election. You are an employee at an organization. We trust that there is a cordial relationship. By law, time is supposed to be given to you to cast your vote. Even now, those arrangements should be made, and we have been engaged by one entity already, because they have a staggered working hour with their people to manipulate that whole system so that the business does not close down, but the employees are allowed to. And we have, over the years, have had the complaints of people not allowing me time to go and cast my vote. We appeal to persons, do not take advantage of it. But at the same breath, we appeal to the employers, to facilitate those persons who so desire to go out and cast their vote.
Yes. Ladies and gentlemen, viewers, the truth is there are countries across the globe who do not have the opportunity to be involved in the democratic process. There are lots of people out there all over the world that would like to vote. We've got an opportunity that I think we need to embrace, we need to enhance, and we need to embrace those opportunities strongly. I certainly will challenge everyone on election day, go out and vote. And you are your own individual, you can decide who you want to put your X by. be guided accordingly. And whatever the case is, we're still brothers and sisters, we're aunts and uncles, and don't let the political atmosphere divide us at all. It's been an absolute pleasure here hosting this program this evening. I want to say special thanks to our guests for coming on and enlightening us. For those of you who called in to express your views and to ask questions and give comments, we appreciate you so much. Until next week, God's willing, same time, same place. Stephenson, Worme.